Growing up in the digital age, we're in a world where kids are texting and babies are using iPads. Computers and the internet can be great tools for learning, but how much technology is too much? Randi Zuckerberg, CEO of Zuckerberg Media and author of Complicated, has had a front row seat in the internet world, and she's joining us for her perspective on kid-friendly tech. Thanks, Randi.
Thanks. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about, so thrilled to be here.
Well, thank you for joining me. And so as a tech and media professional and a parent, you've learned a bit about technology. What age is a good age to introduce technology into their lives?
I think, it's a very personal decision for each family, but here's how I like to look at it. I think parents today, when they think about tech, they immediately go to a place of fear. They think about limiting screen time, technology is something they have to limit. What I try to do is I try to turn the conversation around to think about the positives that technology can bring. So sure, you should not stick your child in front of an iPad multiple hours a day. A device is not a babysitter. It does not replace a human. But there are so many wonderful ways that young children can engage with technology that, quite frankly, puts them ahead of their peers and gives them the skills that they're really going to need to be successful.
And companies are thinking about what age is the right age to introduce users as well. You worked at Facebook alongside your brother Mark, and they have a minimum of 13. There's Snapchat kids, Vine kids, YouTube kids. Everyone is thinking about what's the right way to introduce technology to kids. What could technology companies do to address that kid market?
Well, I think right now the government has established this 13 as the age when children are responsible. That being said, in my life, I've met some incredibly mature 10 and 11-year-old children. I've met, some grown men, senators, congressmen that tweet inappropriate things, for example, and maybe should not have their privileges to social media even at, age 50 or so. So I think, again, it's a real personal decision in your family, and some parents might not like what I'm about to say because it hits a little close to home, but I think parents really need to look at their own behavior around technology, because they can't just rely on social media sites' rules and limitations to have their children have good behavior around tech. It starts somewhere. It starts with children observing their parents' interactions with technology. And if you're not establishing boundaries, if you're texting at the dinner table, if you're oversharing online, there's no age limitation that any social media site could put that's going to affect your children's habits.
So like father, like son, kids are learning from their parents. Are there any sort of parental tools, parental controls online that help kids or parents monitor what their kids are doing?
There are, and I think especially if you have young children, a lot of sites, YouTube just launched YouTube Kids, a gated community where, if you type in SE, it autofills to Selena Gomez instead of,
that's what they were definitely searching for.
Maybe what you think it would autofill to on another site. So a lot of sites are starting to think about creating these safer environments for children. I think as parents, it's really important to at least know the sites that your children are visiting. You don't have to be on all those sites, but at least understand how they work, who your children are interacting with, and just know kind of what your children are posting there is very important.
And there's a growing debate about whether smartphones should be even allowed at schools. What do you think about that? Are smartphones a good learning tool, or tablets, or are they a distraction?
I think it goes both ways. There was a really interesting study, I think it was in Japan actually, where there was a school that had a lot of children cutting school. And the school turned around and said, we're giving everyone free iPhones. And everyone was like, yay, free iPhone. And what they didn't realize was that they were being tracked when they cut school.
Oh no.
And all of a sudden, attendance went to perfect, because the school now knew who was cutting school or not, and they didn't want to lose their iPhone. So I think there are some interesting ways to make smartphones and make that technology work, but I do think that schools need to be really smart about it. Just having a phone out there, it's very distracting. I mean, we've even shown even adults are distracted by that, by the rates that we text and drive, that we can't even let a text message wait till we get to a location. So I think it's about balance, especially with children. We need to be really careful.
And there have been some concerns about, too much technology. Could it hurt their eyesight or their brain development or anything like that? What studies or what information out there have you found that seems most compelling?
I think definitely technology is rewiring children's brains in ways that we're just going to start to learn about. In some ways, it's a great thing. Children are being exposed to creative skills, storytelling, photography, art in new ways. And that's going to be remapping our brains in a way that's extremely creative. On the other hand, we now have all of these games, like the Candy Crushes of the world, that are based around these leveling up, these constant dopamine bursts. And that changes our brains too in ways that are just now being studied. Humans aren't used to being at a constant dopamine burst level, and it'll be really interesting to see 5, 10, 20 years from now what that means.
Speaking of Candy Crush, what are some good apps for kids? What are some good games? What should they be directed towards
I am
playing?
a recovering Candy Crush-aholic. So
Me too, everyone is, let's be honest.
I had to delete it, go cold turkey off my phone. But I think actually some of my favorite technologies for kids are a little bit analog. They mix real life building with things you can do online. I love things like Goldie Blocks, especially for young girls.
That's the engineering tool.
Teaches young girls the basic mechanics of engineering. I love Primo and Ludos are two others like that kind of use offline board game type activities that are linked. You are kind of learning how to code and engineer without even knowing it. And there's these really cute robots called Dot and Dash that even a 5 or 6 year old can learn to program and teach the robots how to do things. There's so many great toys now that teach children to program without ever making it feel like they're learning.
Wow, it sounds like the next Facebook's going to be invented by a 6-year-old or something.
Probably, but it's an exciting new world out there, and so I encourage parents to think about tech, the opportunities it brings, not just a place of fear.
Right, looking at tech, but safely and responsibly.
Absolutely.
Randi Zuckerberg, thank you so much for joining me. From the NASDAQ, this is Katie Roof for FoxBusiness.com.